Hi, my name is Sudhir Srinivasan and this is my long review. In this week's long review, I'm speaking English because I'm going to be reviewing a Telugu film. The film is called The Girlfriend and it's been directed by Rahul Ravindran and it features Rashmika Mandanna, Dheekshith, Rohini and a whole host of other actors as well. While watching The Girlfriend, a lot of questions came by me. Foremost among them, I think, is how do you rescue yourself from a situation? I mean, we've seen plenty of films and stories where someone else comes and rescues the girl in distress, the damsel in distress, right? But this film is not about that. This film is about what if you were trained to never seek help? What if you never really got any help from when you were a child? Then how do you respond to, can you look out for yourself? Like right at the very beginning of The Girlfriend, Rashmika comes in, she's carrying a lot of luggage and she's trying to carry them upstairs and someone else offers her help and asks her whether she needs any help. And I really enjoyed the reaction of Rashmika because she's just looking at them, taking a moment, probably even thinking about, am I allowed to ask for help? And this is what I saw as the real tragedy in this film. If you look at it superficially, you may just process it as a story of a girl being oppressed, a girl being suffocated by her boyfriend, right? A girl being caught in a toxic relationship from where there seems no escape. But for me, it's not so much about the man, it is about the woman. It is about, can she save herself? Can she, the fact of the matter is that she is a confused, almost willing victim of this because she has so many tiny opportunities to say a word of protest, to stop her boyfriend from treating her the way he is. But this film is about how long does she take to get there? How many events does she take to get there? What does it take for a docile, well-meaning, nice girl like Bhooma to get there? And this word nice is very important here, I think, because we have forever been treating that word as only a compliment. We have forever been treating the word nice as a desirable trait alone. Now, the question is, sure, it helps to be nice. Everybody likes a nice person. But what about the person themselves? How far do you take your niceness to? Where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between doing something for someone else and starting to look out for yourself, where being compliant in a certain action makes you feel horrible? Then what do you do? And I think The Girlfriend does a really good job of capturing how Bhooma's situation becomes worse with each incident, how she's being pushed towards a future that she definitely does not want, and how, it all begins from very seemingly innocuous incidents. Like, for example, the first time she goes to take a copy of Hi Nana, right? The Nani film. So when she goes to visit Vikram, played by Dheekshith in this film, all she wants is a copy of the film so she can watch it in her own room, in her own comfort. But when she's invited into his room to watch the film, and when he is very compelling in making that request, she's put into a situation that a lot of us find ourselves in. Because sometimes there are situations where we are not sure we want to say no, where we are not sure, what we want, but all we know is that we probably don't want it and we probably sense the slightest sliver of discomfort. Now, in these places, the strong-willed are able to say that, hey, I'm not really sure I want to do this at this moment. Let me think about it and I'll get back to you later. But the weak-willed, the people who are used to being treated as doormats, the people who've never been able to fend for themselves, talk for themselves, protect themselves, what they end up doing is they end up going with the flow. They end up going with the situation, and before you know it, they find themselves in worse situations. In this film, for example, yes, she goes in to watch the film, but what does it lead to? It leads to a kiss that she's definitely not prepared for, that I don't think she wanted even. And yet, look at her standing limp, unable to defend herself against it. And girlfriend operates in such good spaces because it's impossible for you to say that he forced herself upon her. It is quite possible for him to have read certain signals from her and felt that maybe she wouldn't mind it at this moment. But when you see Bhooma standing passively there, just taking that kiss and not really fighting against it either, it really tells you a lot about her mental makeup. And the next few days, when the whole college gangs up and unites in pushing her into the relationship, again you see that, when society, when the environment is pushing her, earlier it was the boyfriend, much earlier it was the father, now it's the whole college pushing her towards decisions that she is not sure she wants to take. But the problem is, right now she's simply unable to say that I am not ready for this decision. So she ends up walking into these spaces willingly, in a very confused space of mind. And that, I think, is the real tragedy of her character for the longest part. And I'll tell you this, if you're not going to claim your space, everybody else will, the world will. And before you know it, your space will start shrinking. And that is what happens in this, in the pre-interval moment that I absolutely loved, how Rahul visualizes it and how he's filmed it. And you see her, in a very cramped space. The walls are literally closing in, and it really captures a sense of claustrophobia, the sense of asphyxiation that she's feeling. And this is what happens to people who don't really say no, who don't really look out for themselves, and value their own space and their own free will. And for me, this is why I think the first time we see a ray of hope in Bhooma's mind in her life is a moment that made me well up. It's a moment where she looks at her friend Durga, played by Anu Emmanuel, and she looks at her and she asks her for help. And this is the first ever time that she decides to do something for herself, and she decides to look past her introverted self to approach an outsider who's much better than her. And I really enjoy that this happens in a space where these two women are not discussing men, where these two women are just pursuing a common hobby. They're talking about, I'm talking about theater, and they're acting, and Bhooma feels like Durga is a far superior actor. And when she approaches her with meekness, almost reluctantly, with extreme timidity, Durga looks at her and says, "Oh my God, you're so sweet." And yes, Bhooma is so sweet, and that's what we're talking about. And that is when the walls between them start breaking. Because until then, both of them have known each other probably. I mean, Durga definitely knows Bhooma from the perspective of Vikram, and that is a corrupt perspective. And now when these two women look at each other for the first time, we see how cathartic it is for both women, and we realize the importance of friendships between women, and how, it really protects them from constantly seeking the validation of men. And all of this is why I did not see the film as a love story. I did not just see this film as a women empowerment film either. I saw this film as psychological horror. I saw this film as, making sense for both genders, truth be told. And I really think that anybody who lacks the will to stand up for themselves will see a lot of great value in this film. Yes, it is made from the perspective of women. So yes, it does deal with, it is feminist by definition. But, this is so much about Bhooma, and whether she is able to summon the courage in her mind, whether she is able to, how much pain will she bear? And this is where I think her name also becomes relevant. Bhooma Devi is named after planet Earth, which has so much capacity to absorb everything, right? For me, we see this many times in the film, especially when on that particular moment, right? Just before the interval, where she's taken to Vikram's home and she interacts with Vikram's mother, played by Rohini. And this is when she pictures herself for the first time in the future, and she wonders what will happen to her. And in many of our lives, we've done that, right? When we are about to talk to someone, when we are about to get into a long-term relationship with someone, or join an office, we often picture ourselves and wonder whether we will be happy 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And this is, again, beautifully, the psychological space is wonderfully captured in this film, where, Prashant's background score, I really enjoyed it. It's very flute heavy. It communicates a sense of disturbance that's going on in her. It doesn't really accentuate it or it doesn't really accentuate her pain. It doesn't draw pity from us, but it just communicates how disturbing it is. So that's why I did not see this film as Bhooma versus Vikram, a woman versus man. Yes, all these dynamics do exist within this film, but more broadly speaking, I saw this film as Bhooma versus Bhooma. Can she unlearn her? Can she emerge out of her conditioning? So yeah. I mean, I have many grouses with the film, of course, but they don't have much to do with the protagonist character itself. I just felt like maybe the other characters could have been slightly a bit more fleshed out, a bit. Maybe they could have had a bit more color. Like the nerdy friend who likes Bhooma, for example, he's too obviously a nerd. He's too obviously a victim of bullying. I wished he looked a bit more normal. You know what I'm saying? I thought he was deliberately cast to belong to a certain stereotype. Moving on from him, I would say that even Bhooma's father, the relationship she has with the father, there's a tiny flashback that we get. Even in that flashback, I felt like maybe it didn't have to be that extreme. There is the idea of starvation there, and I felt like maybe the point could have still come through, that her father is too quickly disappointed with her, that her father makes everything about himself and not about his daughter. I felt like the point could have been made without really pushing him to such extremes either. And I felt like maybe Rohini Garu also plays it with I thought there is a certain exaggeration in how that character gets played, and I felt like, and especially because we see women like Vikram's mother all around us, right? And they're very normal women, but here she's played almost as a really, really creepy, physically stunted woman almost. But you know what? Rashmika absolutely aces this performance, and she makes everything work. And it's so crucial because if you do not side by her, then there is a phenomenal chance that you may be antagonistic towards the whole film. Even worse, that you may end up, even many viewers might just have ended up supporting Vikram, who knows. But she plays it really well. We buy her niceness, and this is the hardest thing to sell, right? Imagine a director telling you that you're a really good soul from within, and to sell that throughout the film, and we truly buy it, which is why we are constantly with her. We are never ever questioning her decisions, and we want her even more than she wants of herself. I think we want her to emerge out of these problems and at some point begin to stand up for herself. And for me, and which is why every time Vikram puts an arm around her, we're constantly thinking, oh my God, when is she ever going to, flick it away? Because that arm around her shoulder in this film is a sign of imprisonment, not a sign of affection. So if this film is about somebody finding their inner light, if this film is about someone realizing that they have strength within themselves, that they are good enough without someone else having to tell them that they are good enough, that they can look out for themselves, then where do they find that strength from? How do they discover it when they have been conditioned from childhood never to discover that? And I like the solutions that this film offers. There are multiple solutions, of course. One is exposure to literature, exposure to and this is why we are constantly seeing Bhooma talking about her love for literature, her love for books, and we have to wonder whether that saved her on some level. Even in the flashback, we see her as a child sitting with a book on her bed. There is that, I think, Matilda, right? So that is one solution. The other is to have allies. And in this film, she has two at least. She has one in the form of Durga, her friend, her unexpected friend, who comes in a moment of great need for her. And the other ally she has is Professor Sudhir. And this professor also is constantly standing by her when a father comes, and how often have we seen teachers and professors take the side of parents, but here she's an adult. So even when Bhooma's parent comes and asks for the transfer certificate, which I think is the scariest thing that can happen to any student, he refuses. He says, no, the adult needs to make her own choice. And I really enjoyed that. So I like these solutions that this film proposes. And I also like that there is no quick transformation that's happening for her. Even when things particularly become worse for her, and we think now she is justified in standing up for herself, there is still one last step she needs to conquer. She needs to conquer the childhood validation that she seeks from her father, which is why she calls her father. And when her father doesn't support her, even in that moment when he slut shames her, and when he wants her dead, pretty much. The scream, man, when Rashmika screams, I could feel 1,000 mini screams contained in that big scream, and it's extremely a powerful cathartic moment, and it's such a relief. And for me, that scream is the scream of death. That scream is the scream of rebirth. And did you notice the irony here? In fact, if her father had wanted her back, if he had said, yes, come back to me and you don't need to study anymore, she would never have liberated herself. She would never have learned to stand up for herself. And therein, this film also speaks of this ancient cycle in a sense, right? When you oppress someone beyond a certain degree, then liberation happens, then revolution happens. And that's what happens here. And her father cannot help but prioritize himself over her. This is what he's done all his life. And so there is a certain inevitability about her resurrection, about her rebirth as well. And thank God for that. Thank God that she has a happy ending, because I don't know how many of such women get such happy endings in the real world. How many of them learn to stand up for themselves, or speak their minds, or to just walk out of a very harmful, toxic situation. At least in this film that happens, and hopefully it'll motivate a lot of us to not really be doormats, and to put ourselves sometimes as see ourselves sometimes as priorities as well. So as you can see, I enjoyed The Girlfriend a lot. Did you? Do leave your comments as well, and I look forward to reading them. This is Sudhir Srinivasan, and this is my long review of The Girlfriend. Until I see you for another review.